Hello, everybody. Welcome to Trek on Tuesday. We are talking about a hot topic. It's Scouting America's latest conservation program. It's called Scouting for Clean Waterways. It's a nationwide effort designed to keep our water clean, and it starts on Earth Day, so it should be pretty timely. Aaron, I think you've been working on this for a while.
I have a little bit, yeah. We did a story on it last fall, and really the brain power, the man behind all of this is the third person on our show today. I want to welcome everybody. Scott Anderson is the chair of the Scouting America Outdoor Ethics and Conservation Subcommittee. He's a volunteer. I always like to point that out. He's a volunteer. He does this because he's interested in it, because he loves it, because he has a passion for it. Scott, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on and giving me the opportunity to talk about Scouting for Clean Waterways. If you'll go to the slide presentation, I'm going to take a minute and give you a little bit of background on how and why this came about.
I just want to echo, Scott, that we're lucky to have you on today. You're very busy. I know we're coming right up on something we've been talking about for so long. So thank you for making the time to join us.
It's fun. And, I will say that we are just thrilled with the support and the cooperation that we've had to make this rollout a success. So let me proceed. I'll tell you a little bit about Scouting for Clean Waterways. This is Scouting America's newest initiative. And if you'll step on the next slide, the reason why we're doing all this is marine debris. And it is a global crisis. Waterway and marine debris, sometimes referred to as aquatic trash, is a substantial threat to the well-being of our ecosystems. And next slide. So it is an environmental harm. So marine debris is a serious threat to marine life. It causes entanglement, ingestion, habitat destruction. There's a huge economic impact. It hurts our fisheries, our tourist industry, and impacts the livelihoods and businesses all around the world. There's a human health impact that we're just starting to realize. Plastic and microplastics are being found in our food sources and water resources. And we have no real concrete evidence as to what that's going to mean to our long-term health. And then lastly, it is a global scope. This is something happening all over the world. And all over the world, there's marine debris that is collecting on our coastlines and ecosystems that we need to address. Next slide. So one misconception is we talk about marine debris and everybody's thinking it has to be on the water. Well, no. 80% of land-based, or 80% of marine debris is actually started on land. And 85% of that is plastic. So that's an alarming statistic there. So doing our projects, whether it be on waterways or on public lands, all is going to make a difference. Next up. So how did all this come about? Well, the World Scouting Movement, Organization Scouting Movement, WASM, developed Scouts for SDGs. And this was a program to empower 50 million scouts around the globe to take action on the Sustainable Development Goals that were developed by the United Nations in 2015. And they did that through multiple programs. The environmental side was called Earth Tribe, and they had a little initiative called Plastic Tide Turners. Now, back in around 2019, there was a Scout Forum made up of youth members, and they were taking a look at the scouting program and making recommendations to the Executive Committee of Scouting America on what they thought was needed in the scouting program. And one of the key points that they came up with is they wanted environmental action. They wanted Scouting America to do something to empower them to make a difference in our world going forward. And I came on as the chair of Outdoor Ethics and Conservation, and I heard that result of that Scout Forum and formed a small committee of volunteers to take a look at the environmental SDGs and what Scouting America is already doing in our programs. Now, we have a lot with our merit badges and our adventures and the Cub Scout program that are all addressing some of the Sustainable Development Goals. But I also thought we could do more. So I was making a presentation on this topic at a national outdoor conference down at Philmont. And while I was there, I had the opportunity to discuss this with Tim Stanfill from Florida Sea Base. And Tim told me about the programs that he's doing down at Florida Sea Base to help clean the beaches. So if you'll pop on the next slide, we'll go back. They were already engaged in a couple of very interesting programs. So dive against debris. So anybody that was snorkeling and diving were picking up debris that was being found. And the goal for Clean Seas in the Florida Keys, where all of the units that were doing a service project down at Sea Base would clean up debris that was found on the beach. And they actually started this whole movement, Scouting for Clean Waterways. And Tim was telling me about it, and he said, wouldn't it be neat if this was something that scouts all around the country did, just like scouting for food? And I just jumped at that idea. And I asked him if I could take that and run with it, and our committee would take the lead and try to see if Scouting America would be interested in such a program. We developed a formal proposal, and if you'll step on the next slide, Scouting America jumped on board enthusiastically to make this a nationwide initiative to empower scouts to combat waterway and marine debris. And the support that I've received from Scouting America and all of the volunteers on the national committees, the various program committees, Scouts BSA, Venturing, Cub Scouting, as well as the International Committee and the high adventure bases have all jumped on board enthusiastically to make this a big success. So now I'll tell you a little bit about what we're looking at. What it is essentially is a yearly conservation good turn. And we just simply aim to go out there and do something to help clean our oceans, lakes, and rivers from plastic pollution and human-made materials. Next slide. So it's a nationwide cleanup. So scouts across America join forces to clean local waterways and local parks and vicinities. It's community impact. Units are making a difference and helping to revitalize our brand, that scouts are in our communities doing great work. And it is environmental education. We are hoping, and we are adding more and more program along the way to help educate our scouts on their local ecosystems and the principles of sustainability. Essentially, it's a cleanup project with some education tied to it. Next slide. So I like to call it the ripple effect. So just like a small stone creates expanding circles, when it's dropped into water, scouts doing individual actions to clean waterways will have far-reaching positive impacts. And we hope that metaphor is just something that everybody can understand, how we can act locally and make a huge difference globally. Next slide. So what is the timeline? How does all this happen? Well, we are officially rolling it. We've officially rolled it out, but we are saying as of Earth Day, Scouting for Clean Waterways is a thing. But it's an ongoing yearly initiative, and it can happen anytime. There is no required time span that scouts need to do a project or need to do something. They can be done in April, May, and June, which is what we're recommending, so that they're around Earth Day or Scouts Trash the Trash Day. But they can happen anytime that the unit can do it. Maybe it's an added activity to something they've already planned. My example would be, you're going on a canoe trip. Take an hour to clean the beach area before you launch, or maybe when you do your pullout. It's easy to add these projects into all of our activities. Plus, there are many watershed protection organizations out there that are running scheduled cleanups. And instead of reinventing the wheel, we could just join them and participate. So imagine PAC 54 going to the Chesapeake Bay water cleanup as a unit and working with that organization.
Hey, Scott, before you move on, I was going to highlight a comment that kind of fit in there. Gene says, mentioning Sea Scouts, they're doing beach cleaning just about every day we operate, as well as removing obstructions like logs. So that's kind of exactly what you're talking about, right? It can totally fit into what you're doing.
It is. And, again, this is not hard to do, but it is a nationwide focus on doing something to remove marine debris. If you'll step on the next slide, we move on to, what does it take? Well, simple to make a plan. Choose the date and location for the cleanup project, or add a project to something you're already doing, or join an event planned by one of the many watershed or waterway protection organizations. Prepare what you need. So you're just going to gather your supplies and organize your leadership. You'll go do your cleanup project. And then lastly, you're going to report and share that information. We want to hear your stories. We want to know about the great work that's being done. And, Aaron, in your scouting, Aaron on Scouting blog, you've already highlighted some great work being done by scouting units across the country over the last couple of years, all that are clearly clean water scout programs. So what we have is a method in Scout Book, and I'll talk about that next. You can share your story with local media, or you can report it to Clean Water Scouts at scouting.org. Now, Scout Book, I had said that the Scouting America jumped at every opportunity to help to support this effort. Scout Book was one of the first groups out there to make it possible in where you enter service hours in Scout Book. There's now a drop-down link under the Conservation and Environmental tab where you can say this was a Scouting for Clean Waterway project. And if it's a Scouting for Clean Waterway project, they also ask you for the poundage estimate. So how much plastic did you collect, or how much was all the rubbish that you collected, and how much was the plastic that you collected? Now, the reason that's important is that our partners, next slide.
And that's really important. Yeah, I know you're about to expand into this, but I definitely want to make sure we emphasize, we want to report on this. We want to get some data on this because we will be using it for a long time to come. I know you're delving in, but alert, everybody pay attention to this part.
Scout Book has a great video on how to do that too. So all of that information is available on Scout Book so that you can learn the steps to take. But they've made it very simple. And the same is true now with Scouting for Food and for Messengers of Peace. If you're doing any of those kind of projects, there's a drop-down menu that supports them. So we, our marketing division, came up with some wonderful partners for this program. First out of the bat was Clean Hub. And Clean Hub has a pound-for-pound match with us. So for every pound of debris that the Scouts collect around the world, around the country, pound for pound match, Clean Hub is going to pay to have that much additional trash removed from our waterways. So that's a huge benefit. So everything you do is doubled its impact. NOAA's Marine Debris Program is where this got modeled after, is their debris cleanup programs. And they have a lot of resources online, and they are a valuable partner, as well as the Goal Clean Seas and the Florida Keys, which is where all of this kind of started way back with Florida Sea Base. So again, local impacts contribute to worldwide cleanup initiatives. So it's just a terrific, exciting time. Next slide. So what's out there for you as a reward or as something to encourage participation? Well, National Supply jumped right on board, and we now have an official Scouting for Clean Waterways patch that is currently and now available at the scoutshop.org. So you can follow that link, or if just simply search it Scout Shop for Scouting for Clean Waterways, that patch will come up. And then coming soon are some on-demand items. So the T-shirt, which you can get actually your names put on there. They can be modified, customized to meet your needs. So your whole troop could have it, or your whole pack or unit. There's also water bottles and hats that are going to be made available. And all of this is coming soon. So National Supply right on board with some wonderful examples of what they have planned for us. Next slide. More information. Well, the website which can be found on scouting.org under outdoor programs, scouting-clean-waterways, or you can just search it on scouting.org, and you'll get to the appropriate page. Has been fully flushed out. And when you arrive there, there's 3 big links. One for Cub Scouting, one for Scouts, BSA, and Venturing, and Sea Scouts, and then also one for councils. And all of those lead to resources that can help you organize and plan Scouting for Clean Waterways programs and activities. Next slide. So what do we want? We want everybody to be the ripple that starts the wave. And again, we're just thrilled to announce this program. And we already have, I'm getting reports already from scouting units that have started and already planned or have completed a Scouting for Clean Waterways project. And we are expecting this to be an active initiative for many, many, many years to come. And with that, I will turn it back to you, Aaron.
Yeah, great information, Scott. Just so everybody knows, we're talking about Scouting for Clean Waterways. It is Scouting America's newest conservation initiative. Scott is the chairman of the Outdoor Ethics and Conservation Subcommittee. He's the volunteer who's making all this stuff go behind the scenes. And Scott, you kind of touched on this earlier, but there's just a few topics I want to dive into a little bit more with you if we could. You brought up Scouting for Food as a comparison, and I think that's really interesting because Scouting for Food is something that all scouts do. They do it different times of the year. I think a lot of folks do it in the fall, right? But some folks do it in the spring, and that's kind of what Scouting for Clean Waterways is like. Is that correct?
Correct. Absolutely. I've been asked a few times, what does success look like? How many pounds of garbage or how many bags of trash? And I keep saying, no, if 10 years from now, if this program is still enthusiastically being done by scouts, it has been a success. And, Scouting for Food is the great model for that. That has been our most successful service initiative that we've ever done. And I hope that this can compare to that.
Aaron, I know you have a few more follow-up questions, but just to take a look at some of the comments, Steve on YouTube says, looking forward to implementing this in the Mount Baker Council in Washington State. Their scouts are caring for the Puget Sound and the waterways that feed into it. Keep those kinds of comments coming. We're very curious. What projects are you planning? What projects are you already taking part in? Gene also asks, the situation on the patches. How can we get patches? The national park gives out junior ranger patches for helping out with cleanups in the national parks. Do we have any information on that yet?
Well, I mean, the patches are available. The Scouting for Clean Waterways patch is available at scoutshop.org. And it is not an award, so there's no requirements to earn that patch. If you want to wear that patch just to be supportive of the program, that's fine. Or as a thank you to everybody that participated in a certain project. An award system is available for scouting good turn, so conservation good turn. And if your project was extensive enough to qualify for a conservation good turn, that award patch is available to you.
Fantastic. And Martha also has a question. Sorry, Aaron. Will this count as conservation hours for ranking up? Good clarification.
It does. Now, bear in mind that the Scoutmaster has to approve what service is appropriate for rank advancement. So the Scoutmasters have the discretion to determine what qualifies as conservation service in those requirements for Life Scout, for example. But in all cases, it qualifies as service hours. So in all of the requirements that you need for Cub Scouting or Scouts BSA or in venturing that require service hours, an hour spent on Scouting for Clean Waterways definitely qualifies. The Cub Scout program, with their new rollout and their Champions of Nature Adventure in all of their programs now has an activity card that is completely dedicated to Scouting for Clean Waterways. So go to those resources for the Champions of Nature Adventure for each rank, and you can find that activity card.
Very, very cool. As you mentioned, Scott, we did cover this on the blog last fall when it was first announced. Some folks have already done some projects. There were some done at Seabase last summer. One of the most common questions I've gotten, Scott, that I'm hoping you can answer since we first announced this, what if we don't live anywhere near the water? What's your, because it's called Scouting for Clean Waterways. Scott, your response?
So, again, remember that 80% of marine debris begins its life on land, sometimes miles and miles away from water resources. So I live right next to a community park. And if I go out there with my scout unit and we go out with bags and we pick up all the debris that we can find, particularly that plastic debris, and have the mindset that we're doing this so it doesn't blow into our waterway systems, then we have done a Scouting for Clean Waterways initiative. So it's just a matter of making sure that the scouts understand that that plastic bag that is blowing right now across the driveway is going to find its way into a water resource and eventually be this marine debris or aquatic trash.
Mm-hmm.
So let's clean it up now, whether we are on land or next to a waterway or in our coastal regions. All of that debris matters. Did I answer the question?
Aaron?
No, that's a perfect answer. I was gonna address Richard's question also.
Perfect.
Go ahead, you do it.
I was just so Richard says on March 8th, our troops and PAC will be doing a PAC cleanup, which includes cleaning out waterways. Could our scouts still earn the patch despite the project being before the launch date? So Richard, yes, we've addressed the patch. The patch you can even just pick up as a sign of support for this initiative. But Scott's got to give us the answer. Can they record that cleanup?
Yes, absolutely. So the recording is active today. So there's no waiting to Earth Day. The program has officially launched. We were going to announce it in media, I think, on a lot of social media on Earth Day, just as our contribution to that program. But it is running now. It actually started the 1st of January, so it is an active program. And scouts that are doing projects today can all record that information on Scoutbook under the Environmental and Conservation tab. You'll find an initiative roll down that's Scouting for Clean Waterways. And again, the patch is not an award, so scouts can buy those patches through scoutshop.org, or leaders can do that and present them as thank yous. They're there. That's there to support the program, and we would welcome everybody wearing and showing off their Scouting for Clean Waterways memorabilia. So,
yeah, honestly, how cool would it be if come Earth Day we actually have some data to report? And a reminder, you can record these projects. We haven't always had a way for units and councils even to record what the work that you have done, your service you have done, and now we can. So let's really be timely about reporting what you do, so we can share the impact you're making in your communities.
Yeah, shout out to our friends at Scoutbook who, as Scott said, jumped on the opportunity to add this feature. That's very, very helpful. And I want to point out real quick something that Lanissa in the comments is doing. She's tagging some friends, which is a great thing to do. If you guys know of anyone else who might enjoy learning about Scouting for Clean Waterways, tag some friends. That's a great idea. Great way to share the word. Scott, you've mentioned a few times the plastics. And I think Scouting for Clean Waterways, we'll take any debris, right? It can be any sort of trash that you find, but you've also mentioned plastics. Can you just tell us real quick, why that's kind of the major concern?
It is the plastics that are being broken down into the water resources, and they're being consumed by water life. And it has entered into our food systems. So, if you were to take a glass of water and actually examine it under a microscope, there's microplastics in that water now. So plastics are, again, we don't know the degree to which that's going to be harmful to our health. But one can only surmise that it's not natural and therefore probably not a good thing. But again, all debris being removed is valuable. Plastics are the one thing that we are seeing more and more turn up into our fisheries and everything else as we actually do examine the internal organs of our fisheries and stuff like that. We're finding more and more plastic in their systems. And we just don't think that that's going to be a good life-sustaining thing.
So Jen says Capital Area Council plans an event to support Clean Waterways on May 3rd. She also tagged somebody, a good reminder to tag anybody who you think could benefit from watching today's episode. Okay, Scott, I'm putting you on the spot here. Have you seen any projects around the country that you're like, hey, that's pretty cool?
Well, it was actually just recently down in Circle 10 Council. Did a wonderful Facebook of, I don't remember the name of the lake that they were at, but they did a full unit, participated in a cleanup project, and they were, proudly, there were pictures of them tied off and making sure they were safe as they were reaching down into a waterway to pull out things. And they had bags and bags of garbage, and it was just exciting to see. One thing I want to get back to is you mentioned invite a friend, and I can't emphasize enough what a great recruiting opportunity a Scouting for Clean Waterways project might be. And if it's carefully organized, and you are doing something in your community, there's no reason why we can't invite friends and families to come and join our scouts and participate with our scouts in a service project. And that gives us a wonderful opportunity to tell our great story and why scouting is so good for our youth and for our communities.
Yeah, I love the fact that you said the Circle 10 Scouts shared theirs on Facebook. That's kind of a part of that ripple effect. Like you said earlier, we'd love to get the word out and spread the news that this is a thing that we're doing. This is a good thing. Scott, what if you're a scout whose troop has participated in a Scouting for Clean Waterways project? You did something great, but then maybe there's a little pond in your neighborhood that your family feels really attached to. Is there any reason why you couldn't go out with your family and do a little Scouting for Clean Waterways project in your neighborhood or something?
Absolutely not. I mean, again, we're just trying to promote the activity.
Yep.
And if the activity is a family going out and doing their share or their part, that's a great thing. The question is whether or not we can get the data from that. And that really goes back to the Scoutmaster, if they're willing to enter your service, the Scout service hours into the program. When you enter that information on Scoutbook, you have the opportunity to answer how many were non-scouts that were participating. So as long as the Scoutmaster is willing to enter that information into the Scoutbook, then that can be recorded.
But that's a good clarification, Gina. If I could just real quick, if you do something like that with your family, talk to your Scoutmaster or Cubmaster, whoever, about making sure it gets logged into Scoutbook, so we know that it happened, and we can be proud of that. We can share the news, things like that, right, Scott?
Absolutely.
You can feel free to say you heard it here. We want them to report it.
All else, send us an email at cleanwaterscouts@scouting.org and
there you go.
Tell us what you did. We'd love to hear that you and your family went and did this project.
If you are a parent or a leader, we highly recommend you have your scouts pay special attention to the March issue of Scout Life, which could be in your inbox now, in your mailbox now. It's definitely on the app, but in the next week or so, you'll get the print issue of that. And we have a feature on the Clean Waterways initiative, lots of information for them to check out, and also a reminder of the hashtag, which is hashtag Clean Water Scouts, which I think you can start using now, right?
Absolutely. Do it this weekend if the weather's nicer where you are than it is here where Gina and I are right now. Scott, before we let you go, maybe one last question. You mentioned earlier, this program will be a success if scouts and families are still doing it 10 years from now, which I think is a really cool way of thinking. And I certainly hope that's the case. But maybe you could just give us, before we let you go, why is this kind of thing important? Why do scouts need to be taking on these kind of projects?
It was interesting as part of that Scout Forum, the term eco-anxiety was put forth, and wanted to empower scouts to combat eco-anxiety. And what eco-anxiety is the feeling of despair because of the environmental conditions that we're living under, and that there's really no long-term hope for the planet. And there's documented evidence that is affecting our mental health going forward. And the way the World Scouting Organization looked at that is why they developed Scouts for SDG and their earlier environmental program, was that if we empower Scouts to make a difference, that alone is what combats this anxiety. So in the case of Scouting for Clean Waterways, we are giving Scouts the opportunity to go out and make a global difference, a global impact, by doing nothing more than working together with your peers to do a cleanup in the area that you reside in. And collectively, that impact is enormous. And that empowerment alone will just demonstrate to that individual that they can personally in their lives make a difference in the world that's facing them in the future.
That's a really interesting and cool context here. I can even fall victim to that myself, of just thinking, hey, what can we do? But that with that attitude, nothing. So yeah, this is our antidote to that.
Yep, this has been a great discussion, Scott. Thanks so much for joining us today. Any final message or anything else we need to share before we let you go?
No, I just hope everybody encourages Scouts to go out and participate. I know that I have a local Cub Pack here that has one planned in 3 weeks. So I'm going to make sure I go out and go visit with them. And I just can't wait to see the smiling faces as we all work together for a better world.
Very cool to see you shaping the initiative, from a top level and then down, boots on the ground, actually participating in a project with Scouts. So cool. Aaron, thanks for covering this. Scott, thank you for bringing your expertise to the show today. Come back anytime. Everybody, keep your eyes out as we continue to provide resources on how to record your projects and your service hours for Scouting for Clean Waterways and other projects that are going to come up. Aaron, what am I missing?
I think we have said it all. Again, thank you all for watching. Appreciate that. A lot of folks in the comments talking about their upcoming plans and projects and things like that, which is really cool to see. This program it's a toddler, I think, right? Just in that very, very early stage. It's still kind of getting its legs about it, learning how to walk. And man, we really hope in a few years it is off and running, and we can just kind of barely mention it, just like we do with Scouting for Food, and it just sort of will run. So that's the goal. Thank you all for watching. Thanks again to our guest, Scott, for joining us today. Gina, thank you. Behind the scenes, Brian, thank you. We will see you all in a future episode of Trek on Tuesday. So long, everybody. Bye, Scott. Bye, Gina.
Bye.